Hello my friends, my name is Gorilla and welcome back to the channel. Today to be going over a 24 Halls Legend just in the last fortified week. It was a really fun key with Asuna and King Alex, and I had a blast. This is also my highest DPS key, so it's a little bit of a brag. For talents, I'm going to normal talents, except for instead of diffuse magic, I'm going dampen harm, just to deal with the shard's damage a little bit better. But other than that, nothing's out of the ordinary. I'm Benfier as always, and that's going to play a huge role in my damages key. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Alright, so we're starting out this key, and this is definitely not a route I don't think anyone should replicate. This is at best, a science experiment done by King Alex himself. It didn't really work out all too well, if we're being honest. But we are going to skip these first two mobs. We applied the Houndmaster, and then we're going to pull these two Gargans into the first shard pull. On this first pull, we are going to Lust, so I am going to delay my phone order just by a bit, since we don't really need it for the first fresh. This is also where Damon Harm is a really strong button. Diffuse magic is good if you don't have many decurses inside a group, or if you're not confident in your decurses. But in a group like this, I'm confident in them, so I just had to go dampen harm. And on Sharp Pearl specifically, it's kind of just a race with cooldowns. Normally there are around 3 minutes in between each pull with shards, so you really don't have to worry at all about using Chi-Ji or Revival or really anything. We're here to choose Revival, since it's going to be up during times that it's needed. And now we're going to pull in these Groundskeepers. It's definitely on a week like this, you should never be pulling them in with Shard. You should always just pull them after if you are planning to pull them. And even with these Groundskeepers on the ground, we still want to focus on the Houndmaster since we don't want it to be bolstered again. But we're cleaning up the pull, we're ready to go into the next one. Making sure that everything is dead before we go into the next. I'm gonna get a quick drink here. And with pulls like these, the Dark Blades are definitely the scariest part, especially if you don't trust your tank that much. Tanks can sometimes pull like 180s on people, which then get them hit, which is just something you gotta look out for. Windwalker right there gets hit by the frontal, which is why I don't really understand why we didn't pull those first two mobs, since now he actually cannot go. Especially since his belt failed right there, so now he has no potion and no belts, and there's no way that he can get over. Right here, my tank wants a kite. I don't have Rappo for him since I already used it, but I do have Bubble, which will allow him to be able to run back just a little bit. I'm just gonna Tiger System to speed him up right there. But as you can see, Chi-Ji's already back up. There's plenty of time between shards to use your CDs. He gets up by the frontal again, and that's just quite unfortunate. And the best way I kind of get around these frontals is by I'll be using my range as a Mistweaver since we can kind of have a longer range than other melees. So we have more flexibility on where we can actually stand in a fight. Yeah, in this dungeon there were a lot of hits from the frontals. Normally I'm the one getting hit by frontals, but this time it's everyone else. And from here we're going to do another smaller pack. It's not wise to pull a Gargan pull along with Shard, so we're just going to do this smaller Groundskeeper plus Huntsman pack. The tank really wants to start kiting now, which he's just going to stand back. I ring a piece, so is the other monk. If you do have two monks, it's always wise to communicate better about your route placement for your tank. I tried to get a quick drink right there, but it didn't really work out that well. On pulls like these, in any other dungeon where it's just a bunch of mobs clumped up, I would just use spinning crane kick and mostly only spinning crane kick. But since it is halls, and especially on a bolster week, I do want to get a little bit more priority damage onto the shard. Getting a little sketchy right here, so I pop a defensive, just so I don't have to heal myself as much. Tank is dropping low, everyone's kind of dropping low, I'm kind of low on mana, but the shard is almost dead, and that's really all that matters. I panic, use Fort Brew right there. So on Incinerator, normally they're not very scary, at least for the first beginnings, but once your cooldowns do run out, it is kind of a game of using Mana Tea properly and using defenses properly. So as you see, we use Mana Tea right here to get a few much cheaper Vivifies out. Some people call monk tech. That's kind of the term I hear most of the time. And it's with using nitro fuel that's found in WoD along with a campfire and a paladin sack. And you can manage to pull a lot of things through walls. Most of the time you just pull things like Tormented, like we're going to do right here. But you can pull things such as the last boss in halls and reset it. So the way you do it is you target what you need to target, which in our case is a roof. You place a campfire, you drink your nitro fuel, and then the paladin sacks you. And if you do it properly, and if you're in the right spot, it'll either make roof or whatever you want snap to you, or sometimes it'll walk to you, depending on what you do. It's kind of finicky, as we see. Some of us gave up right there, and we thought we weren't going to get it, but we did. We have 2 immunities here, so it's kind of a cakewalk for me. And if I ever got it, or if the other monk got it, we could have bop and taunted, so we actually are dealing with even less dots. I was thinking about going Mana Chalice here, but I realized that really the difficult parts of the dungeon are basically over, so it's better for me to go Champion's Brand. And at this point, the overall is looking really, really great for me, even without showing any gargoyle damage. On this route, we did decide to skip Oros. It's sometimes a risky thing to do. It's a little scary, especially on the first boss, but it's definitely doable. We didn't mean to really pull that Gargan in, it was just something that kind of happened. So we're just going to use it on this pack instead. And as we see, with Quaking specifically, and with a lot of melee, I kind of take the approach of, I respect the other DPS over me first. I'm really not going to be the biggest pumper in the group, so I would rather them be able to get more damage in than me. And now we're on to the next pull. I have all CDs up. This should be easy. We're just going to Lust here. I could have cocooned the monk right there and possibly prevented that death. It's definitely on me right there. The thing with ROP sometimes is, in pug scenarios, and even without pug scenarios, sometimes tanks don't really hear you loud and clear. So sometimes I'll nudge at them saying you should probably start kiting and they won't really listen. Or sometimes they'll want to start kiting and you're not really listening. So it's kind of a balancing act, and right there, I kind of want to tell him maybe you should start backing away because of bolstering, but he didn't really care much about that. We're waiting here just for everything to get grouped up. We're going to do one more pull until we go to the first boss, and this first boss is going to melt. I'm gonna get a quick drink before the boss. It's also just a great time since we're gonna go wrangle up a few of the gargoyles. When dealing with doubles, you just wait until they're close enough together, and then you just double click. Now we go into boss. Also one of my favorite dungeons just for this one specific part. You just look so great in the meters and you look like you're actually doing real hero damage for once. Kinda feel like you're up with the big boys. Really, I think the trick with this boss specifically, since I see a lot of people struggle with it, is both understanding like when your tank is going to move, and with that, just making sure you're always behind the boss so that you're never going to hit by the frontal. And when dealing with intermission on this phase, it's mainly just staying inside the straight middle, just so there's no unexpected outcomes. But this fight requires, for the most part, very little healing. You get to do a lot of damage. It's just a really fun fight altogether. And even in times like this, I have 2 defenses up. I can just completely soak all of that. Fight is almost dead. I'm just trying to get a little more damage in. It was a little risky on my part, but I do have a prop pally and he always has my back. And that fight is down. And now we're just doing the normal invis skip. Just tire yourself yourself and then use your invis pot or belts and you'll be able to make it very easily. This boss, especially with a prop pally, is kind of easy. For the most part, the main strategy is you're going to be mostly doing single target damage, and almost all single target damage, up until the ads get wrangled in, and then that's when you start spinning crane kick. And you always want to make sure you have some sort of defensive or cooldown running whenever all these ads shatter, because they do a lot of damage. Oh yeah, I just bubbled a monk just so I had to do less healing. But from this point on, it's just rinse and repeat. With monks, you can roll out of it. If you do get decursed, all you really have to do is just wait until the last second, and then once he starts jumping onto you, you just roll. Or you can use Transcendence, or Door Shadows even if you really want to. You have a lot of ways to get out. At this point, the dungeon timer seems a little tight. It looks like we're not going to time it, but we do have to remember we already did one of the tormented. This bowl is a little bit scary, as we see right here. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things flying out, and a lot of things that everyone kind of has to do in conjunction. At that point, I do rob just so my tank could kite away, but he decided not to. He does have bubble. I did bubble him while he bubbled, which is kind of a mistake. Bubble's in such a low CD that misusing it like that really is not going to matter all too much unless there's a massive blunder coming up. We're not going to use this collector to go funnel into the boss. Always remember to hug the right side there. You do not want to pull Saga on. That is probably the worst thing you could ever do. And now we double click. And we're on to the boss. Something that's notable with Quaking 2 for Mistweavers is that if you do want to get something like an Essence Font or Vivify out, the best way to do it, even with Quaking out, so for example, if I'm using Essence Font and Quaking is below my feet, you can use really any spell to cancel it, and you'll still get the value from that Essence Font while not getting nature locked. This fight is probably one of the easiest in the whole expansion. Really, it just sums up to dodging, making sure your DPS kick, and then moving to the urn with the ghost. It's all predictable damage, there's not much damage out there to begin with, and overall it's just a pretty easy fight. Unfortunately, we did miss a lot of kicks, so I did have to do a little more healing than expected, but it's no big deal. Now this fight is done, we're gonna go into the next room, which, the best way I can put it is just pure chaos and anarchy. We'd have a really good group for this since we have so much AoE cleave. And as a healer, I think the best way to really do this room is, for the most part, you just, during this first part, you purely DPS, and once all these ads start coming out, that's when you start using more CDs. As you see, we're going to start taking a lot of damage soon with all these ads, so I pop them on order. So now we're going on to the final boss. We have plenty of time. They're just gonna let me drink really quick. On a 4 week, it definitely isn't necessary for me to drink right there. On a tyrannical week, definitely. This fight really, really hurts on tyrannical. And it's mostly just that dot on the tank. The thing I see most prevalent within most keys is that people get hit by the statues, and the best way to really dodge them 100% of the time is by looking at their eyes. If the eyes are pointed at you, then start running, and if they aren't, then you're safe. I've seen some people try to do it with the line, but that is kind of finicky, so really the definitive way is just by looking at the eyes, which way it's facing. On this phase, I normally just take like a backup one if needed. And that may just be because I pug so much and I just don't really trust a lot of people. As you see, it's pointing near me, I move. I technically didn't have to move for that one, but just for safety measures. This is the second door of shadows. And this will be a little scarier. I don't really have any cooldowns for this, besides for revival. But for defensives and such, we'll be able to heal for this very easily. I bubble the tank right there because that dot is going to start hurting really bad, and I don't really want to heal him that much. So it's better for me to just use that cooldown. Right here, the monk gets blasted, and for a second, I actually didn't even know where he was. So I actually had to look around for just a quick second before I could be resin. But this fight is basically wrapping up. But anyways, that's the key. That also is my highest overall damage in all of Season 2. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.